Hello, fellow nonprofits and skeptics. Six individuals, self identified as members of a religious group called Soldiers of Christ, have been arrested on murder charges in Georgia's Gwinnett County after a malnourished woman was found dead in a car trunk outside of a spa. The victim, who had suffered weeks of abuse, was discovered in distressing conditions. The suspects, including a 15-year-old, face charges of felony murder, false imprisonment, tampering with evidence, and concealing a death. Authorities believe the crime took place in the basement of a nearby home, and the victim probably just moved here recently from South Korea to join the religious organization. The investigation is ongoing, and the victim's identity has not been disclosed. This article is from CBS News and was published September 6, 2023. Infidel, let's start with you. What do you got to say?
When I read this story, one of the first things that I thought was, I'm sure I'm not the only one on this panel has been asked why you spend so much time talking about religions and gods you don't believe in. But, out of the many reasons that I've been given, this has demonstrated another one. I don't think a young person deserves to be starved and killed and then left callously to decay in a trunk of a car. I see this as an indicative of religion dehumanizing its enemies. The Bible and the Quran are just two examples of how enemies are treated, and history is littered with these examples. And I think that what we're seeing here with this group is just another example of treating people as less than human. I'm sure that most Christians will react with, shock and horror, but they dehumanize people every day. They talk about woke and LGBTQ plus community and other groups that they deem unacceptable in a way that's really nothing less than demonization. They devalue people. They make them, it's okay to not treat people like humans. And sometimes they literally use religious rhetoric like demon possession or that other people are devils. QAnon goes as far as to call their enemies not human at all. So this kind of hate, this kind of disregard for human life is, I think, exactly what we're seeing come to the forefront with why a young woman who was found dead in a trunk of a car so callously. Christians shouldn't act shocked. What do they think is going to happen when they treat other people like they shouldn't exist and they don't deserve things? What do they think? This is going to end up as a sing-along? To me, I just don't understand why this would happen, but I can't be surprised. This is what religion does. It hurts and damages people. And Phoebe, I was wondering what your take on this was.
So it's all a bit fishy here. So they're identifying the victim as Midsummer here. And if you're British or a fan of the crimes of this world on dramatic television, we all know of Midsummer Murders. So for the purposes of this, imagine that I'm DCI Tom Barnum. And I'm here with Gavin Troy sat next to me, and then George Bullard one further over, and then Benjamin Jones, DS Benjamin Jones in the corner. And we're here to investigate this murder in Georgia. And it's all a bit, fishy. It's weird and just a bit unexplained. So much of this story is left out in the open. Why was the woman here in the first place? Why was the victim even in the United States at all? And why is the age range of the people who have been arrested so young? The youngest is 50 and the oldest is 26. And there are 6 of them. This is an incredibly narrow range of ages. And they're all South Korean men. And then it's all just a bit strange and goes, what? Because so much of this is just compounded and compounded and compounded on top of itself that it just doesn't make any sense. Where was all this done to her? Why was she in the back of a car? Why was she so malnourished? And Jonathan, DS Gavin Troy, please take over.
This is more than just a distressing story and a horrible story. It kind of breaks my heart that somebody would be subjected to this. But obviously, something happened to entice her to come to this cult. And she was starved and beaten for weeks. How could any human being do that to another human being? I know we're not supposed to dehumanize people, but this, after the search warrant was issued for the house where one of the suspects, I guess, had, the place where this happened was in the basement of his house. And I can't wrap my mind around, much less my emotions around, how this could happen. And a neighbor didn't know. And I guess they did talk to some neighbors, and they said that, the only thing they knew about the people is they were very insular, and they would occasionally stand outside in a circle and talk to each other. But that's all that he knew about them. He never heard or saw anything.
Hang on a minute. I'm going to just jump in here. People always say this. How did the neighbors not know? But to the panel here, do you all know the names of your next door neighbors on both sides?
Yes, I do. And the ones across the way as well. And one across the street.
Yes.
And how quickly did you know those names when you moved in?
Within 3 days.
A couple of weeks at the most.
I'm pretty nosy.
But
I'm just being honest.
I want to point out that there is a sense of privacy in the U.S. in many places, and a lot of people don't know who their neighbors are. That's pretty common here.
Yeah, and so, just the time I hear that, I just go, but it's one of these things that harks back to 1950s white picket fences, where everybody was a nosy neighbor and everybody had a housewife that stayed at home and everyone knew what was going on in everyone else's business. Today, everyone does not know what's going on in everyone else's business. And it's one of these things where, oh my God, I should have known something. No, you shouldn't have known something, because I value my privacy and my neighbors value their privacy. Yeah, I know their names. I don't know their occupations. I don't know their ages. I don't know their middle names. I don't know how long they've lived in the neighborhood. And
I can understand not only knowing their occupations, because the guy who lives across from me, he's been in and out of jobs, about every 3 weeks since I've known him. So.
There's more of a jack of all trades then than someone with,
or a jackrabbit jumping between trades. I don't know.
But on that point, though, is that something we should be concerned about in society at large that allows things like this to happen in suburbia?
I think it is something that we need to be concerned about. I don't think people need to be nosy neighbors like Gladys on Bewitched. Sorry, I'm dating myself.
Or you're really showing
infidel admits to being a nosy neighbor.
I'm gonna just call me Gladys Kravitz. I'm all about it.
I don't even know that even if you knew what was going on, that some people would say something. I mean, look, if anybody knows the story of Kitty Genovese, that everybody learns that story in Psych 101 when you go to college. But I mean, people knew what was happening and nobody called the police. So I'm not even sure that even if people knew what was happening, it would be reported.
I mean, in Europe, some prolific pedophiles have kept children in basements in suburban streets.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I mean, I won't mention
that happen in Belgium
names here because I don't want to give them any infamy here, but in countries like Belgium and in the Netherlands, large paedophile rings have occurred in basements of middle-class suburbia.
Yeah.
How do we, as a society at large, where there are churches that are behaving like this, there are nefarious individuals behaving like those described in the Low Countries in Europe, what do we do to replace that sense of community that some people show to have been lost by the reduction in religiosity that used to be? Kelley?
That's a good question, and it's something that I've talked about before. We need to build a support network for atheists just like a church is a support network for theists. When atheists have a problem, they're suffering from an emotional or sometimes financial or any kind of mental problem, they don't have anybody to turn to, and we really need to build that community. That's one of the things that I'm really thankful of the ACA for, is that it's helping to build that community. We try to do that over on the Discord server too. So I think you're right. We need to have that for our community. It seems to me that Korea is like a hotbed for weird religious Christian cults, and I wanted to look into that because I thought it was weird that all these weird things were coming out of South Korea. And I found out that Christianity has really been expanding rapidly and pretty quickly in South Korea ever since World War II. Well, at the end of World War II, about 2% of the population was Christian. And in 2015, it was nearly 30%. And this might help you understand some of what was going on here. There's a movement there called Minjung theology, which
are these Moonies?
Pardon?
Are these Moonies?
No. This is not Moonies, but it's something that it's not. It's something that's even picked up by the Catholic Church in Korea. It combines the idea that God made men in His image with this Korean ideal of what they call Han. And it doesn't translate well into English, but it denotes a feeling of inconsolable pain and hopelessness. So it's basically, it's the acceptance of God. And since you are the image of God, you will no longer have to suffer with Han. So that's the attractiveness to these people who are living still in an agrarian society within a second world nation. And they've suffered their whole lives like their parents did and their grandparents. The history of Korea in the last 100 years is not pretty. So there is this desperation there, and this idea that Christianity is going to solve that desperation. Infidel, you want to add to it?
When it comes down to creating community and removing this privacy problem, because it is beyond privacy, and I understand and appreciate privacy, at least to a sense, but
Mr. Nosy.
Exactly. But at the same time, it is important to know what's going on around you. And I think that we've kind of gotten away from that into a point of we run from one bubble to the other. We run from our vehicle to inside to work to, it's always, we're not really interacting. And I do think that's a loss overall. I think that only enables people with the worst intentions. And what we're seeing here, obviously, is people the kids, and for the lack of a better way to put it, the young people who were charged with this. I mean, they didn't just wake up one day and end up here. There's a path that led this, and there's a path of belief in somebody who led them in a very wrong direction, and they ran with it. It doesn't remove their responsibility from it. It doesn't take away their part in this, but I think that South Korea is one of those places that is not well inoculated as well as some places are against some of the Christian doctrines that they're new to them. There's something different. And I think that that's unfortunately one of the things that's caused that appeal for them. But as far as how do we get around it, I've got to be straightforward. I don't know. But one thing I do know is that it's important for Christians to understand that they can't look at this as just something isolated. This is an operating procedure that we see time and time again of people making really bad choices inside of religious groups. And until they own it, they're going to continue to run from it, deny it, and it's going to keep happening. It's not going to just disappear. And if they, as many things as they throw under that rug and pretend it's not there, it's still there. They can pretend it's not there, but the bigger that mountain gets, the harder and harder it gets to ignore. And that's what I'm really hoping, that some of these things, it's really nothing to be gained from some young woman being dead in the back of a car. And I hope that one thing that people can take from this, though, is maybe we should step back and not be so easy to excuse people when they have bad behavior as being, they were just under the influence of brainwash. Jonathan, you had anything else to say about that?
my take, cults make monsters out of people. They probably didn't start wanting to be this way at all. Most people, I believe, tend to want to be good, or at least want to be the hero of their own personal movie. That's what their internal dialogues tell them anyway. I know mine does. But they're not originally willing to do unspeakable acts against people who no longer, with no regard to the law, with no compassion at all, basically almost psychopathic lack of caring or feeling for another human being in the name of some religious principle. And I can think of a lot of instances of this, especially most recently in various countries around the world, from various religions, of doing pretty unspeakable, horrible things to a person just for a religious or a traditional belief. And these things make people this way. They take their inbred need for belonging and compassion for other people and strip it down and then create a monster. That's what happened here. 6 young people whose brains weren't even fully formed are now encoded with this kind of BS. It's going to be a very long road if they ever climb out from under it. But, hopefully a very long jail sentence will do it. But this kind of thing makes me reconsider my opposition to the death penalty. And so I just have to use a mantra that a friend of mine when I was in high school gave me. Why do we kill people who kill people to prove killing people is wrong? And I just say that over and over again. Maybe somebody can tell me why people like this have the right to live. People who would throw somebody.
I can easily answer that question. I can easily answer that question. Because the state does not have the right to engage in the killing of its citizens. Full stop. The state does not have that right. And just because somebody has killed somebody does not entitle somebody else to kill them. Just like if somebody steals my car, I do not have a right to go and steal their car.
I don't know if their car's a better car.
So...
I agree with you. But when I read things like this, it puts me in a little bit of a bad attitude. And
be the bigger person. Do not give in to that base instinct of revenge.
That's why I keep chanting to myself, why do we kill people who kill people to show that killing people is wrong? And that's basically where I'm at. We shouldn't be doing that. And I don't think under any circumstances, so it's the state should never have the ability to do that. But
Kelley.
And I agree with you 100%. But still.
So Kelley, what have you got to say on this?
I wanted to check out the Soldiers of Christ a little bit because I wanted to find out who they were. They do have a website out of Colombia. It's completely down right now. It says they're going public on October 1st. I don't know if that's had anything to do with what's going on with this case, but I suspect it might. One thing I have to wonder about too, and it was something that nobody brought up. We all mentioned how young these guys were, and it made me wonder if this was just like a gang of villains who were just using the Soldiers of Christ as a front to lure this young woman over here. And did they have plans to do this more? Have they already done it? That's something that I want to know. History has shown us that people have used religion to take advantage of and hurt people throughout. I mean, it's been going on for thousands of years. And so I got to, I have to wonder if them using the religion was just a front. A little bit of trivia, though. I was talking to a member of the ACA, and they told me that not only do they live right near this spa, but it's also right next to the mall where the show Stranger Things was filmed. It doesn't really mean anything to the story, but it was a cool bit of trivia. Phoebe?
Well, DCI Tom Barnaby here, looking at all of the evidence. I've got absolutely no bloody idea what's going on here. If you have any idea, please let us know. But for more from the non-profits, click here.